What's up, guys? Rotoduok here. So something I noticed in a lot of the comments you guys have been leaving is one, a request for just an overview of what Pokemon are meta, and then specifically anti-meta Pokemon to counter them. And just a common trend is a lot of people saying that they're just getting into competitive, they're new to competitive, and that's fantastic. So I figured a good way to start this whole discussion is to cover basically the entire OU tier list. So every Pokemon in PokeMMO is ranked on a weekly basis based on usage, and those usage stats then reflect whether it's OU, overused, UU, underused, or I think RU, rarely used. Because Pokemon has slightly less Pokemon, they only use those three tiers, and then everything else is just untiered. So you can use any Pokemon in a tier above where it's placed. So any UU Pokemon can be used in either UU or OU, whereas OU Pokemon can only be used in OU. So just because something is OU doesn't mean it's always the best Pokemon for the job, but generally speaking, OU Pokemon are mostly the strongest, and they're what the general consensus is as being, probably the best Pokemon to use in a given situation. So I'm going to be covering everything in the Pokedex that's listed as OU, and I figured the best way to do that is just start at the top of the Pokedex and move across. For today, I'm planning on just covering the first 11, so the first row of the Pokedex, which is all the Kanto Pokemon and a couple of Johto. So a special shout out to Cyclone Mike for coming up with the format that we're using here. We're just going to be covering the Pokemon, potential moves and items they can have, what to expect from them, the best way to counter them if you have an issue with them, and why you would use them. Cool. So without any further ado, let's hop into these slides. Okay, so first up, we're looking at Dugtrio. I hate to start off on this note, but sadly Dugtrio is the first one in the Pokedex here. So why is Dugtrio used? Well, because of his ability being Arena Trap. Arena Trap means that grounded Pokemon cannot switch out. Grounded meaning they're neither flying type nor have the ability to levitate, and nor holding a Shed Shell. So, I mean, technically you could run like Shed Shell Blissey to prevent Dugtrio from trapping it, but don't. It's not worth it. Hopefully this thing is banned, as that they recently just banned Sandvale Garchomp for being uncompetitive. Hopefully this follows suit, as it is completely broken, and while it's not the highest usage at only 5.97%, something being just bad for competitive play in general, and encouraging poor play and sloppy team building, like Dugtrio does, is, in my opinion, very different from something being just numerically the best Pokemon, if that makes any sense. Like, Rayquaza should be banned from OU because it is numerically too powerful, whereas Dugtrio should be banned from OU because it promotes poor play, it's just generally uncompetitive, and removes options. Like, in one of the battles that I was doing, I think in the last video, you can see the guy I'm playing against, between Wobbuffet, Dugtrio, and Encore, the guy, I think, makes, like, he chooses 3 moves, and then, the game is over. Because then I forced him into a position where, I think it was Volcarona set up. Like, I just controlled the early game, literally, he had no choices, and then Volk swept him. And it's just a very bad playstyle. You have to run multiple counters to special threats. It scares off sand teams or sun teams from being competitive. Promotes rain. There's lots of reasons. But my rant on why Dugtrio is bad over. Let's look at what you would use if you're using Dugtrio. So for Dugtrio, the natures you're going to go back and tune before are Jolly and Adamant. Dugtrio's speed is such that with Jolly, you'll outspeed virtually every non-Scarf Pokemon under Jolteon. I mean, notably, like, Crobat and stuff will also be faster than you, but Pokemon that you can trap. So with the Focus Sash, or if Jolteon is choice locked into something and you can confirm that it's a choice specs, which is a pretty common Jolteon set, you can bring this in, trap it, or, worst case scenario, you can bring this in, get it knocked to 1 HP from Hidden Power Ice, then kill Jolteon, and then it's still fast enough to usually kill something and get up rocks. And Reversal actually does incredible damage at 1 HP. So even with a Jolly Nature, you can still kill a lot of things. Jolly Nature does mean that some Tentacruel can survive your Earthquake, so going Adamant can prevent that. That's one of the main reasons I would use Earthquake, or one of the main reasons I would use Adamant. There's, of course, some other KOs that you can secure with Adamant, not with Jolly. Really just comes down to preference there. So for the items, Focus Sash is really what makes Dugtrio broken. Being able to, no matter what, just kill something is incredibly powerful. Choice Band is great because that takes a lot of Pokemon that aren't quite one-hit KO'd by Dugtrio and turns it into one-hit KO. With the Choice Band set, you would run Stone Edge or Rock Slide over Reversal. And probably Sucker Punch over Stealth Rock there. That's just that. So yeah, for EVs, pretty standard. Dugtrio, just attack and speed. Okay, so let's get into the moves. So Dugtrio has some notably very powerful moves. Earthquake, Reversal, Stealth Rock, and Memento is the set that I'm currently using. So Earthquake, just because it is your strongest stab move. Reversal, because at 1 HP it actually becomes stronger than Earthquake on neutral targets. Stealth Rock, because if I have, like, let's say a Magnezone that I've trapped that's locked into an electric type move, I might as well take my time, get up Stealth Rock, and then kill it. Especially this is what I do against Tyranitar, because even Scarf Tyranitar is slower than Dugtrio if you're Jolly. So when I trap a Tyranitar and I'm at full HP, I'll just Stealth Rock on the first turn as it knocks me to 1 HP and then one-shot it with Reversal. So I still have a functioning Dugtrio. Their Tyranitar is dead and I got Stealth Rocks. Memento is what I use to let Volcarona set up on things, because generally in a lot of these teams it's Dugtrio clearing out the path for a Volcarona sweep. The other notable moves are Screech. So Screech allows Dugtrio to, in one Pokemon, pull off what the Scizor Wobbuffet Tickle combo does. I've covered that in a previous video if you're curious what I'm talking about there. Basically, he could lower Blissey's defense or Chansey's defense and then kill them himself with Earthquake. It's risky because, you know, Screech can miss. Maybe they get some lucky protects and a Toxic in there. It's, you know, I generally prefer the other way around, but it is an option to have. Sucker Punch is an option to hit Gengar, as otherwise you're pretty weak to it. And the rock type coverage moves are great. They let you trap and kill Volcarona, whereas Earthquake will never one-hit KO it. Toxic is good. I guess if your opponent is trying to bring in a sweeper on Volcarona that Volcarona doesn't really touch, just a Toxic on your way out. Again, these are all notable moves. I don't recommend all of them, but they're just options to look out for. If you see a Dugtrio, it could have these moves. And yeah, let's hop on to the next one here. Okay, so next up we have Tentacruel. For Tentacruel, its ability Liquid Ooze is basically that if you would use a draining move like Giga Drain on it, instead of healing, you take that much damage for whatever you would have healed. This is most notable when a lot of Volcarona carry Giga Drain as their coverage. So Giga Drain hits Tentacruel neutrally, whereas your other two moves hit not super effectively, or not very effectively, goodness. I think if you're running Fire Blast, it's actually better to Fire Blast than Giga Drain, but regardless, if you're running that, that's what you'd use against Tentacruel. However, as you'll notice, this would in fact make you be hurt instead of healed, meaning that Tentacruel is, you know, just an even better check to Volcarona than it already was. So it's a special defensive tank, and it has base 100 speed, are two very good stats of it. That's why for the EVs, 252 HP is, you know, pretty necessary. But then with the other stats, you can kind of do what you want. You can put in as much speed as you feel necessary, as, you know, sometimes a timid speedy set could be used to outspeed lots of Pokemon that would expect to outspeed Tentacruel. I generally think a specially defensive set with enough defense to survive a Jolly Dugtrio's Earthquake is the best set, but again, up to preference. That's just how I would use it if I use Tentacruel. And Black Sludge, pretty much the only item you're going to want to use on this thing. It's just leftovers, but hurts your opponent if they steal it. Yep, and that's about it. So, Calm, of course, being the nature, you do increase your special defense while decreasing your physical attack. So, Rapid Spin is one of Tentacruel's most important moves. It's what it's known for. Spin support, getting rid of rocks, great. Also, the fact that Gengar can't really threaten this thing means that there aren't great spin blockers to it. Cofferegus also doesn't threaten Tentacruel, as Tentacruel hits on the special side, which Cofferegus is especially weak to, so it should be able to chase that thing out on its own. The other option Tentacruel has, well, I say other option, after it removes hazards on your side of the field, it can also set up Toxic Spikes on your opponent's side of the field. At one layer of Toxic Spikes, it applies the Poison effect to everything on your opponent's team that switches in while grounded. So similar to Spikes, Poison basically does, I want to say 1/8 of their max HP, double what Leftovers heal, or what Burn does. Whereas Toxic, if you get up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, it applies the Toxic effect. Now, Toxic's damage doubles every turn, and it starts off at 1/16, so I'm sure you're all familiar with what Toxic does, just does that. Very good to get up. It means that tanky Pokemon can't just keep switching into you, and for longer matches, it's definitely a good thing to get up. Now, Scald is great because it does a lot of damage and burns way more than 30% of the time, as anyone with a physical attacker is known. Haze is great because some Volcarona will try to boldly set up on you, and this will prevent that from happening. Yep, that's most of the appeals of Tentacruel. Ice Beam is an option there. So a lot of the Pokemon you want to Ice Beam like let's say Garchomp or Salamence, are usually running Earthquake, so it's risky. Dragonite is a bet that might not run it, and so it could be useful there. Or, Ice Beaming on the Switch. Never a bad play. So Toxic is good if you want to Toxic something right in front of you and don't want to wait for Toxic spikes to go up. And Knockoff is also a really useful move. Maybe in place of Haze if you feel that you have other checks against common setup sweepers that Tentacruel checks. Like Volcarona and, no, not Reuniclus. Reuniclus would still thrash Tentacruel. But maybe if your team is super weak to Reuniclus and you really want to use Tentacruel, then Haze would let you at least outspeed Reuniclus, remove its Calm Mind boosts before you die. Potentially an option. Now, Knockoff in this gen doesn't receive the power boost that it gets later on, but it is still useful for removing items. That should be everything you need to know about Tentacruel. At 7% usage, it's used a bit more than Dugtrio, but still not terribly used. Okay, so now we're looking at Cloyster. Although Cloyster's stats would show it as really a defensive tank, what everyone knows it for, and what you'll have hopefully seen so far and hopefully not been swept by, is the Shell Smash offensive set. The ability Skill Link means that moves that hit multiple times always hit for their max amount, so that turns Icicle Spear and Rock Blast into 125 base power moves, which is obscene, and combined with doubling Cloyster's pretty middling offensive stats, Shell Smash turns it into a Pokemon that can really sweep any team not prepared. So how do you prepare for Ferrothorn? Notably, the two most powerful physical walls in the game, being the most physically defensive walls in the game, being Ferrothorn and Skarmory, are neutral at best to Icicle Spear because of their typings, meaning that even max defensive versions take close to 50% from the move after a boost. Means checking Cloyster is something that you've got a couple options. One is special priority. Something like Lucario's Vacuum Wave will always kill a Cloyster, because not only does Cloyster have absolutely terrible special defense, but it lowers that even more when it uses Shell Smash. So something to watch out for is, if they have a Cloyster, try to get Stealth Rocks up as soon as possible. Stealth Rock is great because Focus Sash is the most common item that Cloyster uses. Now, Focus Sash means that it can't get one-shot, but that only applies if Cloyster comes in at full HP. So if Stealth Rocks are up, any Pokemon has the chance to kill it in one hit, meaning that it can't do its usual strategy of sitting, taking your hit, doubling its speed and attack with Shell Smash, and then killing you back and trying to sweep. Priority is generally a good check, and Scizor is a very common check as it resists both of this Pokemon's moves, threatens to kill it, just straight up kill it with Superpower, and has Banded Bullet Punch to deal a lot of damage, although even after a Shell Smash, I'm not sure if it's a one-hit KO. Kind of depends on the set. Okay, so now let's get into the actual stats. Usage stat, 8.6%. We're getting a little bit more common than the previous two Pokemon. So the natures you're going to see are Jolly, because Cloyster's base speed is so slow that you really do want the highest speed possible for when you double it. That will allow you to outspeed things like Scarf Garchomp. And Naive is the nature that you're going to use if you want to use a set that takes into account Cloyster's doubled special attack. So Cloyster's special attack, not as great, and the move pool is certainly worse, considering you don't have the 125 base power moves. But what it does let you do is it lets you catch some Pokemon, like Skarmory, that are expecting to wall a physical Cloyster. So Hydro Pump, coming off of a special attack, or slightly special attack invested Cloyster, will deal way more than Icicle Spear. So, something to keep in mind. Most people run with just the Jolly set, with Ice Shard in this fourth move slot over Hydro Pump, but just want you to know all the options. Now, I've seen Leftovers and Life Orb versions. I generally think Focus Sash is the best if you're going to be using Cloyster. Just make sure to run Hazard Removal so that it's able to switch in and effectively use that Focus Sash. For the EVs, you want Attack and Speed. Pretty standard stuff, physical attacker. So, Shell Smash, most important move. It lets Cloyster do what it can do. Icicle Spear and Rock Blast being basically your two moves to hit the majority of Pokemon super effectively, and just being strong enough to break through some of the ones that don't. Now, Steel types are going to be a problem because, as you've noticed, they resist both of those moves. So Hydro Pump is good as it hits the notable steels that are bulky enough to deal with Cloyster, being Scizor and Metagross are some of the main ones there. Fortress is hit neutrally by Rock Blast, but Tanky Fortress also would be an issue too. Okay, getting into the other moves that this thing can know, Ice Shard is a very common one, and honestly seen more commonly than Hydro Pump. So if a Cloyster, let's say, is forced out after shell smashing and killing something, it still has the ability to come back in and use Ice Shard to potentially revenge kill your Garchomp or Salamence or something like that. So keep an eye out for that. Razor Shell is a move specific to Cloyster in this gen, I believe, but it's just a physical attack that has a 50% chance to lower your opponent's physical defense. So it's, strong move. This thing has pretty high attack after it doubles it, and it does have a physical water move. It's rarely seen because without the massive base power of Icicle Spear, even doubled Cloyster's attack is still middling at best. So often there's better options. Hidden Power Fire is there just because if you're running the special set and really want to slap like a Metagross on the Switch, I think that's what it's there for. It's not fantastic. Again, just potentially could be seen. And Rapid Spin is a great move. Rapid Spin and Spikes. Oh, I forgot to put Spikes on there. But yes, those are the two moves that Cloyster actually used to be known for in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So it could be a defensive Cloyster. Never count that out. But generally, if you see a Cloyster, position around it being offensive. Don't give it a free turn to set up. You basically want to make it burn its Focus Sash to set up. Put it in a position where if it wants to set up, it'll be like Tyranitar knocking it down to 1 HP. At which point, you can use anything like Sand or a priority move to knock it out. So basically, counterplay against Cloyster is get hazards up as soon as possible. Try to keep them up. Try not to give it free switch-ins, so leaving in a weak defensive Pokemon that is going to want to switch out before it gets hit by Rock Blast or Icicle Spear. General counterplay like that. If you have a Volcarona and you're going for a Volcarona sweep, try to make sure that you have hazards up, because even though you'll one-shot this thing, even without a boost, Rock Blast will definitely kill you. So you're going to have its sash broken before you go for a sweep. And yep, that's what you should know to deal with Cloyster and how it can be used. All right, Gengar. I absolutely love Gengar. It's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. Its ability Levitate turns its weakness to ground-type attacks into an immunity, meaning Gengar has 3 immunities, and the ability to switch into a lot of moves, even though it has trash physical defense. So, its usage, as you'll notice, is incredibly high, 21.9%, basically 22%, putting it at the 4th highest usage in the current meta where we're at now. The nature basically should always be timid, unless you're running a tricky, well, even most bulky Gengar sets still use timid. But increasing its speed is really important because Gengar is at base 110. It's faster than a lot of Pokemon, but it kind of needs to stay there. If you run Modest, you lose that speed creep on stuff like Minshao and Fernape and lots of other Pokemon, so timid's always the way to go. Now for the items. Black Sludge is what I currently use. Life Orb is another pretty good set, and I put Choice here because Choice Specs and Choice Scarf are also both useful. You would only use a Choice set if you're running Trick, because of the ability to trick it to your opponent. Either Specs to deal massive damage, and then potentially Trick, or Scarf to make Gengar faster than lots of other common Scarfers, like Darmanitan, if your team really has a problem with something like that. Scarf Gengar also could be a surprise counter to Scarf Hydreigon, which is a very common Pokemon. I don't believe Focus Blast kills, and most Hydreigons, if you're running Choice Scarf, so that is something to know, Life Orb is generally required, or prior Stealth Rock damage. To knock out a Hydreigon, if you're thinking about using Scarf Gengar as a counter to Scarf Hydreigon. Something to be aware of. Now for the EVs, I generally use just high special attack, high speed. On my set, this is mine right there, the Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Substitute, Trick. In my earlier videos, I was running Will-O-Wisp, but I found that tricking my Black Sludge over to a Blissey is just so helpful, even if I'm tricking them to a Swampert, at disabling that Pokemon, that more often than not, that was more useful to my teams than Will-O-Wisp. So I was doing that instead. Substitute is an incredible move on Gengar. It lets you predict switches. So let's say that they have a Pokemon in, like, what's a good example? They have a slow Psychic type. They have a low health Reuniclus in, right? And they also have a Tyranitar in the back. Well, if I Shadow Ball, aiming at the Reuniclus as they switch to Tyranitar, then, what do you know? Tyranitar comes in, takes the Shadow Ball, and if it's Scarf, maybe Scarf kills me with Pursuit. So I don't want that to happen. Alternatively, if I Focus Blast as Reuniclus stays in, now I'm in the same pickle where Focus Blast doesn't kill Reuniclus, and now it just kills me with Psyshock. Substitute is a fantastic middle ground play. Anytime you're in a position of offensive momentum, anytime you are forcing your opponent to say do something or Gengar kills one of your Pokemon, Substitute is almost always better than clicking one of those two moves. Between Shadow Ball and Focus Blast, you'll hit basically every Pokemon in the game for neutral damage. And there's very few situations not to substitute, especially for the Black Sludge set. If you're the Life Orb set and your HP is more important, especially if there's sand up, then sometimes you just have to make the hard read. But that's why I like Black Sludge so much, is being able to heal up by using Substitute on the switches. Because if you do sub as they go to Tyranitar, then you have a turn to Focus Blast and see if they're faster than you, meaning that they're Scarf, or seeing if they're slower than you, meaning, not Scarf. So if they're faster than you, and this is the first time you substituted, if they don't go for Pursuit and you miss your Focus Blast, then cool, just switch out into something that can take the choice Scarf move. If they are faster than you and they Pursuit, assuming you've built your Gengar with max physical defense IVs, which I recommend, and a timid nature, you'll be able to survive the Pursuit if you stay in, so you have 2 chances to hit with Focus Blast. That's some general Gengar stats there. Now, when it comes to other moves, Gengar has a lot. The main thing that makes Gengar appealing is just the variety of sets it can run. Gengar isn't the fastest or the strongest special attacker, but the versatility of Gengar is what's so important. So Will-O-Wisp means that it could potentially cripple any physical attacker on the switch besides Conkeldurr. However, being able to be immune to Conkeldurr's priority move means that once Conk is down below 60%, most versions of it will die to Shadow Ball, and it dies at an even higher percentage if you're Life Orb or Choice Specs, of course. Choice Specs Psychic might just threaten the one-hit KO on non-specially defensive versions. I don't know that off the top of my head, but Psychic is an option that this thing can run. Now, with other moves, Disable is a very cool move in that when used in conjunction with either Substitute or Protect, you can substitute on the move that a Pokemon has to break your Protect, and then just disable it. So let's say you want to stay in against some threat that generally has only one move that can beat you. So we're talking Bisharp would be a good one. If you substitute as Bisharp tries to Sucker Punch, or Toxicroak, anything with Sucker Punch, you could then disable the Sucker Punch or disable the move they tried to use to break your substitute that isn't Sucker Punch, and now you're free to destroy them with that. Just lots of other scenarios where it lets you scout out the one move they have against you. Now, Protect, useful for that situation where you don't want to substitute to waste health. You just want to... I would generally use Protect in conjunction with Disable. That's one of the main reasons why it's good to have there. Mean Look. Mean Look and Perish Song are here as a duo. I ran into us and it almost beat me. It's only because my Scizor crit the guy a couple times, sorry about that I was able to win the match. But it was an incredible set. This is mainly used for trapping Chansey and Blissey you don't think have a move that can hit you. So what you do is you Mean Look as you predict they'll switch to Chansey or Blissey. Usually they will, as those Pokemon basically wall Gengar and are walled by it. Both of them sit there not being able to hit each other, but Chansey and Blissey can usually have more PP, so Gengar has to switch out. And they can potentially get up Stealth Rocks or something. Chansey generally won't run special attacking moves, so if you are using Gengar, you don't have to be afraid of Chansey hitting you. But Blissey, it is fairly common to see either like an Ice Beam or a Flamethrower, generally Flamethrower, on Blissey, so it will have something to touch you. That being said, its damage is still low enough that if you're running Mean Look, Perish Song, and Protect with Black Sludge, you should be able to stall it out and make it die. So what Perish Song does is 3 turns after hearing it, any Pokemon who are still in the battle die, and Mean Look traps any Pokemon in there. Now, Mean Look only applies as long as Gengar is in. So if you Mean Look and then switch out immediately, they're able to switch out. So what you do is you Mean Look on the switch, then you use Perish Song next, and you just Protect or sit there, substitute, whatever you want to do as you fiddle around till the last turn. On the last turn, when the Perish count will tick to 0 and kill both of you, you switch out. Now, because you were in at the start of that turn, your opponent doesn't have the option to switch out. So that turn, you can freely switch out into something else. It's a Chansey or a Blissey. Lots of Pokemon can switch into them pretty freely, and bada boom, the threat dies. This is great when you want to use Gengar as an offensive trapper to specifically Chansey and Blissey. There are some other bulky Pokemon where this could work against, but those are the 2 prime targets, as generally, even though Gengar is pretty squishy, they don't have anything that can touch it, so they can't punish this. Pain Split is a great move on Gengar, specifically if you're running Life Orb Substitute. That will let you keep throwing out incredibly powerful attacks, throwing off substitutes as much as you want, and then if they ever have a Chansey or a Blissey as an answer to you, you can get down to low HP, Pain Split, basically heal all the way back up, while having a really effective attack against this Pokemon. Taunt. Taunt is a great move, because if you were running maybe Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Pain Split. Okay, There's lots of options you could run it with, but Taunt is another way that this Pokemon could beat its common counters. Again, Chansey and Blissey, this is something you'll notice a lot, is that because they're such a problem for Gengar, in that they're immune to Shadow Ball, and Focus Blast has bad accuracy, bad PP, and realistically doesn't pose that much of a threat to them because of their insane special bulk, a lot of these moves are tailored to beat it. Now, Taunt will stop them from doing anything, importantly, stop them from healing, so even though Focus Blast doesn't do that much, eventually you can whittle them down if they're not able to heal the damage off. It works on lots of Pokemon that would want to switch into Gengar and maybe set up, as Volcarona takes so little damage from Gengar that you can set up on it most of the time. So yeah, Taunt, an option to look out for. Thunderbolt is something that I generally don't recommend running. I think it's an inferior move, and really turns Gengar into just another coverage-based special attacker, which is really undervaluing what all Gengar can do for your team, with all of the tricks and substitutes and things that it can do. But Thunderbolt and Giga Drain are both there to be. Giga Drain could also be Energy Ball, but depending on if you need that little bit of damage, you should calc your specific set against Swampert, which is one of the main targets for it, or Gastrodon, especially defensive, to see which one gives you what you need. But the healing is pretty important, especially if you're running like Life Orb, Giga Drain. That being said, my tangent being over on those, they're there. Your opponent's set, just know that they will always be running it. If Thunderbolt is the best move against you, they will have it. If Thunderbolt isn't that important, then they will have the other moves. So I generally wouldn't leave Pelipper in against Gengar, or I would have it in, I would switch to something else and scout for the Thunderbolt, and then in the future, if they don't use it, you can assume that they're not carrying it. It's just things like that. Don't leave your Pokemon too vulnerable to the grass or electric type moves of Gengar, but just try to scout their set before you lose something to it. Just be aware they exist. Destiny Bond, another fantastic option from Gengar. One thing to note on Destiny Bond is that it lasts from the time when it is used until the Pokemon takes a turn. So let's say Gengar Destiny Bonds as you switch some Pokemon into Scizor. If you then priority Bullet Punch and kill Gengar, you will still die because Destiny Bond is in effect until Gengar makes its next move, not until the next turn. I've seen some people lose Pokemon that way, and that's just something to be aware of. Destiny Bond, also a decent set if you're against a bulky Pokemon. Let's say you've killed something, you're at low HP, and you just want to Destiny Bond, let Milotic kill you with Scald. That's honestly Gengar's best way of dealing with Milotic, or Melodic, however you want to say it. And Toxic, also a great option, just to deal with those bulky walls you couldn't threaten to kill. That should cover most of the Gengar options. There are a whole bunch. Sorry for being too in-depth, but I just wanted to cover basically everything I know about these Pokemon, how to use them, how to counter them. Hopefully it's not too much of a pain. Okay, let's hop into the next one, Chansey. So I'll try to go a little faster maybe. Chansey's normal typing leaves it with Fighting as its one notable weakness. Conkeldurr is the best Pokemon to use against Chansey. If your team has a problem with Chansey, Conkeldurr can always switch into it and always threaten it out. Then having other moves to hit their probable switches is great. That's one of Chansey's main weaknesses. Now its main strength is that it has absolutely titanic special bulk, along with very good physical bulk, because of the item Eviolite, doubling, or times 1.5, giving it a very high increased physical and special defense. We'll call it that. 9.26 usage means lots of people have caught on to this. With the natures, you're looking for Calm or Bold to increase either your physical or special defense. One thing to note about Chansey is that you're virtually never going to be using even special attacking moves, so you can get away with 4x31 as your IVs and still have functionally a perfect Chansey. That should just save you some time in breeding. So because Chansey still tanks special hits, as good as anything, you generally want to invest into a defensive set with HP and defense EVs with a bold nature that still lets it check physical attack or special attackers, but lets you counter a lot of physical attackers as well. Like Mixed Mince's Dragon Claw does negligible damage, which is honestly ridiculous when you think about it. Chansey is about the one true counter to Mixed Mince, in that it takes very little damage from either of its attacks. That being, Mixed Mince being a Salamence that is running mixed special and physical attacks. It's something we'll get into when I cover Salamence, but it's a good set, we'll put it that way. So Chansey's moveset is pretty standard in that you'll almost always see Soft Boiled, unless something is terribly wrong, and you'll almost always see Toxic. Now, The other move rotates a little bit between Aromatherapy to heal off the status conditions of everyone. So sacrificing a Pokemon to get status up on someone's team, if they have a Chansey, can definitely come back to bite you if it's just Aromatherapy'd off later. Seismic Toss is great because it allows Chansey to deal damage to Pokemon with its, pathetic damage stats. So as you'll notice from the standard set, Gengar is immune to all the options, which is what makes the Mean Look Parasong set so effective. So other moves, and one of the moves you'll see very often is Stealth Rock on Chansey, because instead of just being a passive ball, it lets you switch in on a special attacker, and get up Stealth Rock as they switch to something else, and then, you can go about the game as you will. It's good. The problem is you have to give up one of those first 4 options, which really sucks. It means you're either walled by Pokemon immune to Toxic or Pokemon with Substitute. It means that you maybe give up Toxic and no longer can check Volcarona. You never give up Soft Boiled, or if you give up Aromatherapy, now you can't act as a Cleric to heal your team, or heal the status of your team. It's a good move, but there is a notable sacrifice involved. Wish can be used over Soft Boiled if you're looking to Wish past your teammates. Generally, I recommend using Wish on Blissey, because Blissey gets the extra healing from Leftovers, which means that it can pull off a Wish Protect set a little bit better than Chansey. However, Chansey can still do it. Thunder Wave is a great option for Pokemon looking to switch into Chansey that aren't really bothered by Toxic or Seismic Toss, specifically Gengar. Hitting Gengar on the switch in is fantastic. Rain Dance, you'll basically never see this. I can almost guarantee that you will never see this. But technically, if you want to use Chansey as a secondary rain setter, it can. Just something I found out while looking up Chansey. Okay, on to the next one. Starmie is here. I love Starmie. It's very underused. Well, it's technically OU, but it's not as seen in OU at only a 5.4% usage. But here's some of the great things about Starmie. Its ability Natural Cure means that whenever it switches out, it heals its status. Oh, sorry. Chansey has the same nature, which is important. It means that you can't just Toxic a Chansey. Toxic and Chansey does nothing. It just switches out and heals it off. So for the natures on Starmie, the 2 main Starmies are Offensive Starmie with Timid, where you use the fact that you have base 115 speed to be faster than virtually every offensive Pokemon, and threaten to kill them with Starmie's incredible move variety, or you run the Bold nature, which lets you actually work as a physical wall, because Starmie resists a whole lot of physical attacks. You'd run your EVs very differently for this, of course, and you could go with that. So for the items, Life Orb and Leftovers are your 2 options. I actually prefer Leftovers. Expert Belt can be run as well. Expert Belt gives you a whole lot of extra damage in some situations, giving you 20% increased damage if your move is super effective, which Starmies almost always are. It means you're less able to beat down something like, let's say, a Cofferegus by just slamming Life Orb Surfs into it. But I think that the ability to pick up kills with Ice Beam and Thunderbolt is probably still worth it there. Now, Life Orb is important, especially if you're using Starmie as a rapid spinner against bulky teams, where you want to keep, or Life Orb is important not to have. The reason you use Expert Belt is if you want to keep switching in Starmie and to rapid spin off hazards, it's going to keep taking residual damage and little chip hits. So killing yourself with Life Orb isn't recommended for that. However, if you want to run offensive Starmie, which is still a good set, Life Orb can be great for that. Now, onto the moves. Rapid Spin is Starmie's defining move and has been ever since it got Rapid Spin and hazards were a thing. It's great at removing hazards while not removing them from your opponent's side of the field. So, generally, when you're thinking about running a spinner versus a defogger, if your team wants to set up hazards on your opponent's side of the field and that's important to you, run a Rapid Spinner. If you don't care at all, run Defog, or, whichever you'd prefer. So, Ice Beam and Thunderbolt form the Bolt Beam coverage, which is electric and ice, hits, again, basically every Pokemon in the game for at least neutral damage. I have Psyshock listed here, but Psychic can also work, and is honestly probably better. The reason I have this move as the recommended set, or at least the set that I'm running on my Starmie, is that Psyshock lets you beat any Gengar that tries to switch into you. As lots of Gengars, we'll assume you're not running that, as most people run Bolt Beam plus Surf, or Hydro Pump or something. So Gengar can switch in to block Rapid Spin, because Rapid Spin is a normal type move and has to actually connect to remove hazards. If it switches in to block your spin, now you can kill it because you are naturally faster than Gengar. With Psyshock or Psychic. Psyshock or Psychic both give you the KO, even against max HP Gengar, so there's kind of no reason to run Psyshock, as Psychic means you deal massively more damage to both Cofferegus, the other potential spin blocker, and also Conkeldurr, because they both have much higher physical defense. Now, some other moves Starmie can run are, of course, Surf and Hydro Pump, being water coverage is very good on this thing, and is generally run. I've just opted for the moves that I feel are most important to me, being able to slam things like Garchomp, hitting Pelipper's, and other Pokemon like that. Now, Recover is a great move, especially with Life Orb Starmie. You could run Recover in place of Rapid Spin, and if there's a Pokemon that you know you're going to threaten out, you can heal up the damage you've been taking over the last couple Life Orb hits, and be back where you were. Hidden Power Fire is thrown on there as another option, as everything we've talked about, all these moves are going to be walled by Ferrothorn. Even Ice Beam won't be doing nearly enough, but Hidden Power Fire is very unexpected, and if your team has a big problem with Ferrothorn, you can actually use Starmie as a counter to it by running a Life Orb Hidden Power Fire. There we go. That should be all for Starmie. Boy, this is getting long. Okay, so now let's look at Gyarados. Gyarados' ability Intimidate is fantastic. Lowers your opponent's attack by 1 stage. Important thing to know, Intimidate does not go through substitutes. So if you have a substitute up, already when Gyarados switches in, it won't lower your attack, which means that it's great to switch Gyarados in on Breloom, but if Breloom is already behind a sub, Intimidate won't affect it, and you'll still take incredibly high amounts of damage from Seed Bomb, well, honestly, and Focus Punch, just because it does so much. Okay, now that that's out of the way, its usage is 10%, so pretty high. A Gyarados is a pretty common sweeper. It's generally seen in an offensive sweeping role, however, it does have base 100 special defense, so don't expect to kill Gyarados with a neutral special attack, like, let's say, Gengar Shadow Ball. That won't be enough, it'll be able to Dragon Dance up on you and potentially wreak havoc. The natures on this thing are Adamant and Jolly. Both are valid. The one major downfall of Adamant is that Adamant falls 1 speed short of outspeeding Jolteon after 1 Dragon Dance. So even 252 speed Adamant, you're still always too slow. So if your opponent has a Jolteon, which is still a pretty common Pokemon, I think 15-16% usage, your Gyarados basically just won't be useful after a dance. Now, that being said, you can potentially try to Earthquake on the switch, predicting them to predict Dragon Dance to deal with Jolteon. And Adamant does give you some important KOs that Jolly just doesn't let you get. But on the whole, if you're wanting to use Gyarados as a boost once and sweep Pokemon, I recommend Jolly just for that. The EV spread down here, the 88 HP, 252 attack, and 166 speed, that is the speed benchmark you need to hit to outspeed a timid Jolteon, which is the speed increasing nature, which is what they all run. And then at that point, with your attack maxed and your speed covered at the fastest relevant Pokemon, might as well put the rest into HP. So that's a pretty good set there. Adamant is if you're running a bulkier Gyarados and you don't care about the Jolteon, you have other ways of dealing with that. You just want to be able to maybe Dragon Dance twice and then just absolutely beat things up with this. Cool. For the items, Leftovers is pretty common, as Gyarados has very good special bulk, decent physical bulk, and Intimidate to basically pretend that it has better physical bulk, if that makes any sense. As with lowered any Pokemon with lower defense, Gyarados will be able to check pretty easily. Waterfall is a fantastic stab move, as very few Pokemon resist water, and notably Ice Fang would then cover those weaknesses. Notable Pokemon would, of course, be Ferrothorn, and that's where Earthquake comes in. Earthquake is neutral to Ferrothorn and won't do that much, but if used in conjunction with Taunt, it means you can stop Ferrothorn's attempts to Leech Seed you, and basically set up Dragon Dances in its face. A lot of Ferrothorn aren't running Power Whip, which is its only way to really hurt Gyarados, so that's a decent option right there. Now, Dragon Dance is Gyarados' main setup move, increasing its attack and speed by 1 stage, or 50%. It means that, honestly, a lot of teams, especially some sand teams, can be vulnerable to Gyarados, as if you have enough bulk to survive Life Orb Excadrill's Rock Slide in the sand, you can set up again on Gyarados, or set up again on Excadrill, and then just tear the whole team apart. Okay, Taunt can be swapped out with Substitute, as both of them are used to basically let Gyarados sit up on bulky Pokemon. So you can Substitute to stop moves like Thunder Wave, Will-O-Wisp, or what's the other one I'm looking for here? Leech Seed from hitting you, as those would stop your ability to sweep and permanently cripple Gyarados. Taunt, basically, the extra coverage you get from Taunt is it stops Pokemon from Whirlwinding you out. So it allows you to set up on Hippowdon and Skarmory, who otherwise would just click Whirlwind and send you out, which isn't stopped by Substitute, as it Whirlwinds you and your Substitute away. So Sub is better if you're not expecting those. If you need Gyarados to be able to set up on Skarmory and Hippowdon, then Taunt is the option for you. Some other offensive moves Gyarados can run would be Stone Edge and Ice Fang. So if you're using these moves, the problem is that Magnezone, especially with max HP investment, will always be able to live your +1 waterfall and kill you back with an electric type move. So if you're running Substitute and you're reliably behind a sub, then potentially you could give up Earthquake. Especially if you're also running your own Magnezone to remove Ferrothorn, then you could run Ice Fang or Stone Edge in that slot to be able to hit a Pokemon like Salamence, Dragonite, and opposing Gyarados, who otherwise you'd be walled by. Now, if you're running Taunt, I recommend Earthquake, as this allows Gyarados to deal with Ferrothorn in and of itself, and also have better answers to Magnezone and other common threats. Okay, Double Edge is an option specifically for running Life Orb Gyarados. Life Orb Gyarados isn't here to sweep your whole team, it's here to Dragon Dance once, and then just, keeping my language clean, wreck some things. You're going to throw away your Gyarados very fast that way, but lots of Pokemon that are trying to switch around which move they resist, like a Garchomp trying to switch in on Stone Edge, just bodied by Double Edge. Rest is an option if you're running a very not commonly seen Gyarados set, where you could run Rest with a Chesto Berry, or just Rest Sleep Talk. You generally run Mono Waterfall with that, with just Dragon Dance, Waterfall, Rest, Sleep Talk. It's great against bulky teams that rely on using status to defeat Gyarados. You just boost all the way up on him and go to town. It's a set to be aware of, and honestly don't think it's bad. It's very unexpected. My friend and I have been practicing around with Gyarados because he loves the Pokemon and we've been trying to use it. We haven't had much success with this set right here, so we might be switching it up and seeing where that takes us. Okay, next to Jolteon, that so threatening Pokemon to Adamant Gyarados. With its pure electric typing, Jolteon doesn't have a bad type, as electric does, resist a lot of things and has very few weaknesses. Ground being a major one of those, though, can be a problem. So its ability Volt Absorb means that Jolteon can switch into any electric type attack and heal up off of it. At 12.6% usage, it's fairly common, and a team that's very weak to Jolteon is what I would consider a bad team. Once anything over the 10% usage threshold, you want to at least have something on your team that can answer it. Timid is the most commonly seen nature, as it allows Jolteon to keep its speed tier above everything besides Electrode, I want to say. But that's totally fine. This thing can't threaten Electrode and isn't threatened by it. Electrode will just set up screens, so generally Timid will be just fine. Modest means you will lose some speed matchups. There will be some Pokemon slower than you that become faster. I don't know them off the top of my head, but that's why I generally recommend Timid. However, Modest can work as you're still faster than the vast majority of Pokemon, and the extra damage is nice. Jolteon's base speed is great. Its base special attack is only decent, which means you want to rely on something like Choice Specs or Life Orb to boost your damage enough to actually deal some meaningful hits when you're not hitting super effectively, or 4 times super effectively. Expert Belt is great because Expert Belt gives you the extra damage to secure a KO with maybe Thunderbolt or Hidden Power Ice, and then, because Choice Specs is so common and you didn't take Life Orb damage, your opponent will often assume that you are Choice Specs, leading them to maybe switch in a Garchomp into what they think is a Choice Locked Thunderbolt, and then lo and behold, Hidden Power Ice comes out, and you're good to go. Now, with the EVs, Special Attack and Speed should generally be maxed on Jolteon, and that's pretty much a given you'll see on every set. Jolteon's best move by far is Volt Switch. By threatening out a Pokemon and then Volt Switching on whatever they're going into, Jolteon will not only damage that Pokemon heavily, especially for Choice Specs, but it will then give you the priority to switch into another Pokemon after their switch, because Volt Switch will of course resolve after their switch, meaning you're just in a position to further keeping their team on the back foot. Thunderbolt is a great move, as it's a fantastic electric-type stab move for Jolteon. Discharge can be used over Thunderbolt if you want to go for the paralysis chance, which is scummy, but honestly sometimes the 30% chance is pretty good, and sometimes that's all you have. Hidden Power Ice forms basically your pseudo Bolt Beam coverage. Now, with Hidden Power's base power being so low in this generation, you really are using this for stuff like Garchomp and Salamence and Dragonite, where the 4 times super effective is important. One thing to watch out for, though, is especially in the case of Dragonite, Dragonite's extreme speed, especially if it's choice banded, can kill Jolteon from a pretty high percent. So if you need Jolteon as a check to like Dragon Dance, as a check to stop, I just lost it. To stop Dragonite from Dragon Dancing, or to stop maybe a Rain Team's Dragonite, try to keep Jolteon at full HP, or as high HP as you can, so that it's still an effective check to avoid extreme speed. Shadow Ball is another coverage option, although I'm going to be honest, this last move is very rarely used. I'm going to cover Jolteon's other moves real quick before we get into some counters against it and what it counters. So Baton Pass is great, as it basically works as a Volt Switch that you can use against Ground-type Pokemon that are expecting to come and block your Volt Switch. You can still Baton Pass into something else. Hidden Power Fire and Fighting give you a great move to surprise either a Ferrothorn or a Tyranitar, respectively, whereas without Hidden Power Fighting, Choice Band Tyranitar can come in, basically take any hit from Jolteon, and then just kill it with Pursuit. As if you Volt Switch out, Pursuit will still follow a Volt Switch and kill you. Now, Substitute is good. This, of course, would reveal that you are either Life Orb, Expert Belt, or potentially Leftovers, although I feel Leftovers Jolteon really is lacking in the damage department. Thunder is good on Rain teams, because if you can guarantee the Thunder hit, it's just better Thunderbolt. Heal Bell is a surprising move that you almost never see, but Jolteon can work to heal the status off your team. Something to know. Growth. Growth is something I want to mess around with. So it increases your attack and special attack by 1. But in the Sun, Growth increases it by 2. So it potentially gives Jolteon access to Nasty Plot, which definitely fixes its middling special attack. Now it becomes massive special attack with very good coverage, and that's something to be on the lookout for. Wish is fantastic because Wish in conjunction with Volt Switch allows you to control who the Wish is going to. And Thunder Wave, although, Wish is based off the user's HP, so it's not that high, but still a decent move. Thunder Wave is great for Pokemon that are looking like Metagross, that could otherwise switch into Jolteon and set up because they don't take that much damage from any of its moves. Good for stuff like that. Pokemon good against Jolteon. Choice Scarf Garchomp is a fantastic Jolteon check, and basically abuses the fact that Jolteon is so commonly used as an answer to Garchomp, basically turning Garchomp into good against what is meant to counter it. Jolteon is, of course, used very commonly to counter Garchomp for exactly that reason. So Slack Berry Substitute or Choice Scarf are great options to use against Jolteon. Switching into Jolteon is a bit of a pain, as if you're trying to predict its electric or ice type move, you can very easily lose a ground type or lose a water type. Some safe bets against Jolteon are Ferrothorn, as very, very few people run Hidden Power Fighting, as that means you lose your ice type coverage. So Ferrothorn is a great check, as well as Chansey and Blissey. So all those are going to be great ways to deal with it, while Choice Band Tyranitar is basically not threatened by any of its moves due to the Sand special defense boost, and Scarf Garchomp are great ways to deal with it. Okay, now on to Dragonite. Wow, this is Dragonon. Inner Focus, as Dragonite's ability, prevents it from being flinched, which means do not fake this thing out. If you try to use Fake Out and it just proceeds to Dragon Dance on your face, you're going to be very sad. At 12.5 usage, it's very common, and Dragonite is not something you can discount. Even though, of the big dragons, it looks the friendliest, it actually has basically the highest attack, at only 1 point behind Salamence. I believe 134 as opposed to 135. It hits harder than Garchomp, and that's something that you should know. Now, for the nature, Adamant, Jolly, and Naive are all valid options. Jolly is decent if you're looking to get off a Dragon Dance boost and you want to try to be faster than some specific Pokemon. However, with its base speed, even if you're running Adamant, I believe your Adamant Dragon Dance will put you faster than most Pokemon you need to worry about. Jolly is still recommended for the Dragon Dance set, though. Adamant is fantastic for the Choice Band set, which is my personal favorite, and Naive is there if you're running a mixed set. Naive is lowered special defense, which lets Dragonite use its pretty good physical bulk and typing against physical attacks. Now for the items, Choice Band, Life Orb, and Leftovers are here for either Choice Band with the Adamant set, Life Orb for a Naive set or an offensive Dragon Dance set, or a more defensive Dragon Dance Roost set would run Leftovers. Now for your EVs, you'd run Attack and however much speed you need. Basically, the Choice Band set has the great option of extreme speeding down a whole lot of Pokemon, and so with that, you'd want just enough speed to outspeed at every Pokemon you need to hit with Dragon Claw. You would concede the fact that this Pokemon is always going to be slower than, Salamence and Garchomp, and not even try to fix that with Dragon Dance. And then, plow through things with a Choice Banded, a Fire Punch, Dragon Claw, and Superpower. So, one of the major hits to the viability of Dragon Dance Dragonite, in my opinion, is Garchomp being released and the prevalence of Choice Scarf Garchomp. The fact that Scarf Garchomp could exist means that Dragon Dancing on either Dragonite or Salamence is always risky, as you could potentially just be throwing your Pokemon away and leaving them with a Scarf Garchomp, which is just an incredible Pokemon in and of its own right. So it's still not bad, and lots of teams can be taken off guard by it, but something you should worry about. Cool. Covering the moves, these 4 right here are pretty standard on Choice Band. So other moves are, of course, Dragon Dance, which would take the place of, I don't know, honestly, Superpower most commonly, as you still want to be able to hit Ferrothorn, you still want to have priority, and to deal with stuff like Jolteon or maybe a weakened Kingdra in the rain. And you still want Dragon Claw, so you have that decent matchup against Garchomp, Salamence, and all that whatnot. Especially, it lets you have a good way to deal with Gyarados. Roost is fantastic, as it lets Dragonite heal up. Now, Dragonite noticeably doesn't have Multiscale. With Multiscale, the ability that makes it take half damage if it's at full HP, Dragonite would be a very good Dragon Dance sweeper, as it could set up Dragon Dance against a whole bunch of Pokemon. Not having that is why I'm more in the Choice Band party here. Substitute is an option. You can substitute on a switch if they predict Banded Set or something and mess them up with Dragonite's fantastic coverage. Waterfall is a decent move. To have a physical water attack, I would generally only recommend it on a rain team, though, and rain teams generally don't need Dragonite for physical water coverage. It's just there so that you know it exists, and you can be prepared. Hurricane is an option that's a very powerful special attack. Now, Dragonite has base 100 special attack, so Hurricane can be effectively used, as flying is a very good offensive type for attacks. It's just not very many Pokemon get good moves, as there really aren't that many good flying type moves. So Hurricane is that, of course, only on a rain team, and that's where mixed range Dragonite comes into play with a naive nature. You would use something like Hurricane, maybe Fire Punch for Ferrothorn, and you could also use Thunder, which also becomes 100% accurate. Earthquake is a good move if you want to hit something like a Tyranitar, and you don't want to take the superpower drops. It also hits Magnezone and some other Pokemon. I mean, it's Earthquake. It's a very good move. Agility is there so that Dragonite can, in one move, just boost up its speed to become faster than I can comfortably say all offensive Pokemon. So that's definitely something to look into. You give up the damage boost, but against offensive teams, Dragonite really doesn't need it, as Life Orb Agility can sweep teams on its own. Cool. Pokemon used against Dragonite, before it gets a boost, it's weak to Jolteon, and it's not fantastic against weather teams, especially because Excadrill resists extreme speed and can threaten to kill it after Stealth Rocks with Rock Slide. At full HP, if you give it some bulk, it could survive that, though, and threaten to KO back on Excadrill. So that's something both parties should be aware of. Dragonite's Choice Band set is very strong, as Ferrothorn doesn't want to switch into Fire Punch, offensive Pokemon don't want to take extreme speed. If you get up some hazards, this thing can definitely sweep. But Scarf Garchomp basically can always scare it out. Things like Rain Kingdra, especially with some bulk on it, definitely always going to be threatening out Dragonite. Cool. Yeah, that'll cover this. Let's go on to Wobbuffet. Oh, Wobbuffet. Absolutely disgusting. Shouldn't exist. Just in general, but definitely in this game. Its ability Shadow Tag means that nothing can switch, as opposed to Arena Trap, where levitating Pokemon have a chance, and you can try to play around it with flying types. Nope, nothing doing here. Wobbuffet says you're in here with me, and you're here to stay. Its natures being calm and bold mean that you can either have your special defense or physical defense increased. Wobbuffet's another one of this Pokemon where you will never be attacking. This Pokemon actually gets no offensive moves, so don't worry about that. 4x31 will still be a perfect Wobbuffet. Its items are going to be Leftovers or Custap Berry. Leftovers is far more common, whereas Custap Berry is used specifically in conjunction with Destiny Bond, where you want to survive a hit at low HP, counter a Mirror Coat to kill the Pokemon that hit you, and then throw off a priority a priority Destiny Bond to take down the next Pokemon. And for those that don't know, Custap Berry is the berry that when you get knocked into low HP, I believe 25% or 30%, one of those, the berry will activate, making the next move that you use priority, and your opponent won't know until that turn. So it doesn't announce when you get hit that Custap Berry activates. Custap Berry activates on the turn that you use it. Just be aware of it with Skarmory and with Wobbuffet. It's much less common, but it could be used. My preferred set for Wobbuffet, though, is the Max HP, Max Special Event set, because I feel that there's lots more special attackers that I want to be taking on with Wobbuffet. Importantly, not Hydreigon. Hydreigon is immune to Mirror Coat. Mirror Coat does count as a Psychic type attack, even though it, of course, ignores weakness and resistance. That is something that Dark types are immune to it. So trying to Mirror Coat on a Jolteon as it Volt Switches to Tyranitar will net you a very dead Wobbuffet, and using it against Hydreigon makes you look like a fool. I definitely did that once, and I looked like a fool. Encore is a great move, because Pokemon with setup moves will try to set up on Wobbuffet. Let's say I'm running Dragon Dance Gyarados. Well, I know that if I hit Wobbuffet, he's going to counter and kill me, so I would try to Dragon Dance to avoid that. But if Wobbuffet knows this, it could Encore me on my Dragon Dance, meaning that it's free to switch into something that could then set up on my Gyarados that can't threaten it. Just something to be aware of. Tickle is something that takes Wobbuffet from being an annoyance to just truly reprehensible. Tickle reduces your opponent's attack and defense by 1 stage each. I believe it's counted as a status move, as it does no damage. So it can be blocked by certain things. I had something use a Magic Coat, I believe. Sorry, getting onto a tangent there. But yeah, what this does is it effectively lets Wobbuffet come in on Chansey and Blissey, tickle them to a point where they die to either Scizor's Pursuit or Dugtrio's Earthquake, then switch out into one of those 2 targets, and bada boom, your Chansey and Blissey have been killed, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now my Volcarona or Kingdra is free to ravage your team. It's not okay, but yet it exists. Destiny Bond is there, although I generally prefer the above set, and Safeguard is an option to prevent your team from status. However, Wobbuffet is so slow that you're obviously not safeguarding on the switch, because it's Wobbuffet. So with Safeguard, you're generally already going to be toxic if they have Toxic, so I don't find it worth using, but it's an option. Throwing it out there. That's all for this disgusting Pokemon. Now let's get into Scizor, one of my favorites, and based on the usage stat at the #1 used Pokemon in PokeMMO, almost 32%, it's a lot of people's favorite. Steel and Bug is great defensive typing, just watch out for fire, and the ability Technician makes Bullet Punch into an absolute menace. Technician means your moves with 60 or less base power get plus 50% damage. So Bullet Punch goes from base 40 to base 60 power, and Pursuit, the same thing. Basically, the quick answer on why Scizor is so important is that its Bullet Punch starts at 40. Technician takes it to base 60, and Stab, meaning that moves with the same type deal additional damage, takes that 60 and turns it into a 90. Well, coming off a priority move, that's pretty good, but it doesn't stop there. Adding on a Choice Band, you're looking at a pretty clean 135 base power, because Choice Band gives you that additional 50% extra attack. And now, coming off, again, a base 130 attack with Adamant, Scizor's Bullet Punch will straight up one-shot quite a lot of offensive Pokemon, especially with Stealth Rocks up. Things like Gengar and Minshao dropping like flies, and lots of other Pokemon. Scizor's a menace. It's also a threat to defensive Pokemon by threatening to U-turn on them. Pursuing Pokemon, like Gengar, that would want to switch out on your Bullet Punch, nets you a free kill one way or another. And Superpower lets you absolutely just punch through Pokemon like Ferrothorn. Now, covering the nature, Scizor should always be Adamant. I've seen Jolly Choice Scarf. Don't do it. Like, it might work once, but the vast majority of the time you're just running an inferior Scizor, so I don't think it's that great. If you want a fast bug type attacker, run like Scarf Heracross. It's pretty good. Okay, Choice Band, great option. Leftovers is an option if you run into the Swords Dance set. Now, Swords Dance is also a very viable and very strong set. Between Swords Dance and Roost, you can actually get quite bulky, and you would invest into just HP and defense in that case, and let the boosts deal with making Scizor as strong as he can. It's not a bad set. I just generally prefer the immediate power of Choice Band, but it stops you from being banded locked into Bullet Punch, as Scizor is naturally faster than Magnezone. So there's always a speed creep war between Magnezone and Scizor, where technically you could U-turn to get out of it, as you're normally trapped being a Steel type, but if it's faster than you, it kills you with Hidden Power Fire. If you're faster than it kills you with Superpower. So be aware of that, whichever side you're on. If you want to not be trapped by Magnezone, you need to invest into speed. If you're Magnezone and you want to trap Scizor, you need to invest into speed, or honestly, consider a Choice Scarf. There's a point where I've just given up that war. I think that you invest into Max Bulk, and if someone wants to run a fast Magnezone with Choice Scarf, then, they get to have my Scizor. And they're locked into the Choice Scarf, Hidden Power Fire, and I can abuse that with some other Pokemon on my team. If you want to make that trade, of course, make sure you have something that can abuse the Choice Locked Magnezone. Like a Dugtrio, that could then set up rocks and kill it, all sorts of Pokemon. So this is a pretty standard Scizor set. U-turn and Bullet Punch are its two most important moves. Being able to throw out incredibly powerful U-turns, just almost one-hit killing, well, depending on the set, potentially just killing Reuniclus. This is one of your best answers to Reuniclus if your team has a problem with it, and lots of teams have a problem with it. No, the fact that Scizor is on every third team means that Reuniclus has some big problems, mainly being Scizor. So if you see a team with Reuniclus and Magnezone, there's a pretty good chance that's a Scarf Magnezone to cover exactly this issue. So just try to play around it. Click U-turn on turns where you'd probably click Bullet Punch, as they will try to switch Magnezone into Bullet Punch. Hitting it with U-turn then lets you, cover it with something else. Okay, now that all that's been covered, let's talk about some other moves with Scizor. So Swords Dance is of course very good, and Roost can be used in conjunction to heal up Pokemon that don't do that much damage to Scizor, and there are a lot of them, and then Swords Dance up a couple times, sweep their team. Quick Attack can be used on that set, especially because there's lots of Pokemon that resist Bullet Punch, and Quick Attack can hit things like Kingdra for a little bit more, and sometimes after a Swords Dance or two, that little bit more can be all that you need. I'll mention it. There are some offensive Scizor sets that can run like Swords Dance plus Life Orb. I generally think that you're better investing into bulk, but it's out there. It's potentially a set, and it does net you some pretty nice KOs. After like Adamant +2, your Life Orb set will be absolutely shredding fast frail attackers, but then you become a lot more bait to Conkeldurr, which is another very highly used Pokemon. So try to keep Scizor's HP high to deal with Conkeldurr. Defog is a move that technically Scizor does get, and I've seen some people use to pretty high success. You switch in Scizor, your opponent switches to a bulky Pokemon to try to take the hit, and you just remove hazards. Pretty nice move. Acrobatics is good, generally on the set where you'd run a Flying Gem. So instead of Life Orb or Leftovers or Choice Band, you'd run Flying Gem, Swords Dance up, throw off a incredibly powerful Acrobatics, and just nuke something. It lets you have a move to absolutely shred Conkeldurr, which is good, as it's very commonly used, and just some other Pokemon that plan to resist either Bug or Steel. So Bug Bite is what you use over U-turn if you're planning on Swords Dancing up, as you sometimes want a Bug-type attack that doesn't switch you out if you're planning on boosting, and Bug Bite becomes 90 base power with Technician. I've seen some people run X-Scizor. X-Scizor is strictly worse. Run Bug Bite. Even though it's lower base power, Technician makes it stronger. Tailwind is there as an option. I've never really seen this run, but it could be, so watch out for it. One of the things, if you can play around it, why not keep it in mind? Scizor can boost its whole team's speed, and that could be a bit of a problem, but generally you won't see that happen. Okay, to use against Scizor, Choice Scarf Magnezone. If you've got a problem with it, that'll fix it every time. Scizor isn't that great against things like Kingdra, so rain teams don't have a huge Scizor problem. Scizor is great for trapping Pokemon. It's fantastic against some sand teams, as they don't have a great way to one-shot it. Basically none. Its U-turn does a bunch of damage, its Bullet Punch does a bunch of damage, and the threat of it being either Banded or Swords Dance is always a dangerous toss-up until you can get a definitive answer. Yeah, that's Scizor. It's number one for a reason. It's just a very good glue Pokemon on a lot of teams. Like, Scizor is almost never a bad option. The ability to U-turn is just so good for keeping up momentum. That if Scizor only had one move and it was only Banded U-turn, it would still be a pretty powerful Pokemon. U-turn and Bullet Punch. Just kind of all this thing needs. Yep, that'll cover it for now. This video has been very long. Wow. Hopefully, that's given you guys all the information you could ever want to know about these Pokemon. Maybe I'll make the next one shorter. Try to cover them a bit quicker. But because a lot of people mentioned being new to competitive, I wanted to cover just as in-depth as I can get, so that you're not surprised by this Pokemon and say, wow, this Pokemon gets this, or wow, this Pokemon runs this set. There should be all the information you need, all of it out there like this. Please watch this at 2 times speed. It'd be a bit of a pain if you don't. But that should be everything you need to know. All right, see you guys.